Hello, welcome to the tutorial for the Happy Days fabric basket pattern. I just wanted to show you one that I've already made. I use these, I've started to make all of these to store all my threads in my sewing room. It's just got all my blues in. So these are really handy, really lovely size. They come in 3 different sizes, and today I'm going to show you how to make the larger one, but it's exactly the same way for each of them, the large, medium or small. And you can adapt the sizes as well by just making them longer across here or deeper if that's what you want. It's entirely up to you. So it's a really versatile little pattern. So the first thing we're going to do is cut out 2 of our lining pieces, and I've used this pink, so I've got 2 for my lining. Excuse my pretty nails, my granddaughter was giving me a little nail makeover, so I've got lots of pretty colours, and I've got 2 of my outer fabric. Okay, now I've already put interfacing on the back of this, so I've interfaced the back of my outer fabric. Now this is entirely up to you whether you put this on, but it does kind of help it stand up. Okay, or you can see I've put it on this one, so it's giving it a bit more rigidity, so it stands up better. Okay, so once you've cut out your 4 pieces and put your interfacing on the back of your outer piece, if you want to, you're going to start with your lining pieces. So we're going to take our 2 lining pieces and we're going to lay one down with the pretty sides facing upwards. Okay, so you should be able to see the pretty side. Then we're going to take our other lining piece and we're going to lay it on top of it, so face down, so our 2 pretty sides should be touching. Okay, pretty side to pretty side. And what we're going to do is we're just going to clip down this edge, and we're going to clip down this edge and along this bottom. Okay, I'm just going to pop the clips on. On this side, and just line it all up nice and neatly. Along this bottom. Okay, so we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew down this edge. Okay, I tend to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for most things I do, and it will be absolutely fine for this. Don't worry too much, this is a great beginner project, so if you make it a little bit smaller, it doesn't matter. As long as you are consistent with whatever your seam width is on your lining and your outer fabric, you'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm going to sew right the way down this side, and I'm going to sew right the way down this side. So the 2 sides that I've clipped, I'm going to sew down. All right. Now along this bottom bit here on my lining bit, which is why you do this bit first, you are going to sew along, leave a gap, and then along again. All right, now I've left about a 2.5 inch gap here because you're going to use this for turning your basket in the right way. Okay, so you do not want to sew this bit. So when you sew here, back stitch here to secure it, sew along, back stitch. Okay, you can just put a little mark on with a pen, so you don't have to have your clips on there if you don't want to. Just mark it with your fabric marker pens. Just put it on there. Hopefully you can see them okay. So you're going to sew up to back stitch, sew along, back stitch to secure it, because you do not want this to come undone when you're turning it in the other way. And the same here, so you sew along, back stitch either end. Okay, so you're leaving this part open. You are not stitching this, you are not stitching this, you're not stitching this, you're not stitching this, and you're not stitching this. So it's literally 1/4 inch seam allowance down this side, along here, back stitch, along here, back stitch. Okay? So I'm back from the sewing machine. I've sewed down this side, and I've done my little parts on the bottom there, and I've kept this bit open. All right? So I'm just going to put that to one side, and I'm going to take my outer pieces of fabric. So I'm going to do exactly the same as I just did before. I'm going to lay one with the pretty sides facing up, and get the next piece and put it on top, pretty sides facing down. Okay, so our pretty sides should be touching our pretty sides of fabric. And then I'm just going to line it up, and don't think this isn't lined up, it's just because my interfacing's gone a bit skewy, which doesn't matter because I can trim it off. I'm going to pin it, clip it again, or use pins if you prefer. And then we're going to take it back to the sewing machine. We're going to do exactly the same as we did with the other one, but with one difference. So we're going to sew down this edge, and we're going to sew down this edge. And then on the bottom, we're going to sew right the way along the bottom this time. Okay, so we're not going to leave a gap, right the way along the bottom. So down this side, along the bottom. Do not sew this bit, do not sew this bit, and do not sew this bit. Okay? Okay, I've sewn down this side, and along the bottom. And the next part of this is we're going to box our corners. Okay, so I'm going to do this really nice and slowly so that you can see how to do it. Pick up your fabric, and basically this seam and this seam need to touch. So using your fingers, open out your fabric. Can you see that it's making those two parts start to touch each other? Okay, so that's it down. We put our fingers in and pull it there. And what we're going to do is line them up like that. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so we're going to make sure that this seam and this seam are lined up and touching each other, and then we're going to put our clip in. So we do it in that middle bit first because that's the trickiest, getting that seam lined up, and then we're going to do the same right the way along. Going to clip that bit as well, and then just take your time getting it together. All right, I'm going to show you again. If you can look now, you can see how it's going to make like that boxed corner. Okay, so this bit again, we're going to take this bit, put our fingers in, pull it apart, line up our two seams like so. Now, if you want to be professional about it, you can open your seams up like that to make them lay nice and flat. Or if you find that too tricky, you can lay one seam one way and one seam the other way, like that. Whatever you decide to do, especially if you're a beginner, it's absolutely fine. As long as those two seams are matched up, that's all that matters. All right, don't worry too much at this stage. And then we're going to clip it along there. Okay, so we've boxed, and you can already see now that we're going to end up with this sort of shape. Okay, you're going to do exactly the same with your lining piece. So you're going to do exactly the same. Let's do it. Bring these out. Match up the seams together and clip. Okay, and then clip along and do exactly the same with that piece. Now, when you've done that to all four corners, you're going to take it to the sewing machine and you're going to sew along here. And then you're going to sew along here. Just a nice straight stitch to sew that corner to make it into a box. So again, I'll use a 1/4 inch seam allowance along here, and I'm just going to sew right the way along here, right the way along here. Just going to line that up a little bit neater before I do that. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on my lining piece. Okay? Okay, so I'm back from sewing along. I've boxed my corners, and I'm just going to give them a little trim just to cut off a bit of the excess. Like that. So you can do that to all four of your corners. It just gets rid of some of the bulk. Okay, so next thing you're going to do is, you can see now, look, you've got your box shape. I'm just going to pan out a tiny bit so you can see a bit better. All right, so you've got your boxed shape. So you're going to turn the outer piece the right way round. So you're going to turn it out, so the pretty side of your fabric is facing outwards. Now at this point, you're going to go and iron it and make sure that it's nice and straight. I'm going to do that in a minute, but I'm going to move on and show you the next part to do. So push your fabric right out. Make sure you're pushing out your corners, because you want it to be nice and stand up nice and well, and those corners to be nice and sharp. Okay, so we've turned our outer piece of fabric the right way out. Then we're going to take our lining and we're going to keep this inside out. Okay, so this one should be inside out and this should be the right way. And what you're going to do is you're going to stand your lining up and you're going to put the outer piece inside to the inner piece, right? And what you're doing is you're matching up the seams. So where you've got the seam on this one, it needs to match the seam on the lining, okay? So I'm going to push that in and I'm going to find the edge of that seam and I'm going to match it up to the edge of the seam of the outer part of the bag. Okay, and I'm just going to clip that there. Okay, and then you're going to go round to the other seam and you're going to do the exact same thing there. I'm just going to fold my seams out. Okay, one there. And the outer seam and the lining seam need to match up. Right, and then you're going to clip right the way along this top edge. Okay, line it up nice and neatly and just clip right the way along. And we're almost done. This is how lovely and quick these baskets are. They're absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we've done that. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew right the way along this edge that we've clipped. So right the way along here, right the way along here, right back to the beginning. Okay, so use your 1/4 inch seam allowance again and go to your machine and just stitch right the way around, securing the two pieces together. Okay, back from the machine. I've sewn right the way around the top of my basket. And now I'm going to turn it in the right way. So remember that hole that we left at the bottom in the lining? Okay, you're going to put your hand in there and you're going to pull your basket through. Okay, I'm just going to give it a tug. You've got a lot of fabric to come through, which is why it's a little bit tough, but once it's all through, it will look lovely. Just give it a pull. Like that. Okay, so we've got it out now. So now I'm going to push my lining inside my basket or box or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so we're going to push it in and then in a minute we're going to take it to the ironing board and we're going to give it a nice iron. Because what you want is you want there to be a nice crisp edge along here where it separates the outer fabric from the lining. As you can see, I'm just doing it with my fingers and just pulling it round like that. Okay. And I'm going to take it to the ironing board and I'm going to give it a really, really, really good press right the way round. Now, we've still got this hole in the bottom here. So we need to sew that closed, because what you don't want is when you're putting things in your basket for everything to fall through that hole. So you're just going to, you can see naturally it kind of stays together there from where you've sewn this bit to this bit. Okay, so you're just going to hold it there like that. So tuck your raw edges in. Okay, and then you're just going to do a line of stitches along here to close that up. Okay, so as you can see, I've sewn closed my hole. I've used white cotton. I recommend you use something that complements the bag. So I really should have done this in dark pink, but I'm just going to put the threads in here, so I'm not that worried. And I had white in my machine already. So I've sewn along white there to close that hole up and push my bag back through. And then, like I say, you're going to give it a really nice iron. press all the way round, all the way in, and then there's your bag finished. Now you can either, your basket, sorry, it's not a bag, you can either leave it standing up like that if you want, or you can fold it down so you can see that lovely contrast. You can put a applique on here. There's so many things that you can do to change up this this little basket. You can make ones for Easter, for Mother's Day. There's loads. I've seen some really, really amazing examples on the Happy Days group. So do go and have a look at in the photos of the fabric baskets. They're really good. Give you some real inspiration. And there's your little fabric basket finished. If I show you it compared to the other one that I did, which is a smaller one that holds my cotton, it will help you sort of get an idea of the size of it. Now, you can also, as an added extra, you can go round and top stitch along this edge if you like. You could use a really lovely decorative stitch. You could just do a straight stitch, or you don't have to stitch around it at all. You can just purely leave it like that. There you go.